Andy Burnham has gone to war with the police. Today, the Police Federation threatened legal action against the Labour government over the early release of two remorseless cop killers. The two monsters guilty of the killing of PC Andrew Harper. There they are, yes, just smiling away as they're being led away. Now, Andrew Harper was an officer with Thames Valley Police, who today came out and openly criticised the Prime Minister.
I do worry about the morale, not just of my own organisation, the confidence.
Well, there you go. This is GB News Originals. I'm Emily Carver. Please do give this video a like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. And do leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Do you think
of my 10,000 people who work with Thames Valley Police. So I urge the government to look again at this issue. I know it's a difficult situation because of the prison crisis that we have, but I would urge the government to look again, because I do think there is a risk of impacting public confidence in the criminal justice system.
Very rare for a police force to come out and say something like that about a Prime Minister, but it does get worse for the Prime Minister. It's emerged today that 9,300 domestic abusers are set to be released early, thanks to his government's decision. So how many women and children will be put at risk there? There's no way that you're telling me that the authorities are going to be able to keep tabs on all of them, and we actually know that this has backfired before. Domestic abuser Jason Hoganson was released early back in November 2024. He was then recalled to prison 24 hours later after immediately trying to contact the woman he was in prison for abusing. So far, Andy Burnham has let down the police and survivors of domestic abuse, but now it's emerged he's also letting down children who've been sexually abused. Initially, a lot of people misread headlines like this, mainly because people wrote quite dodgy-looking headlines, because it makes it sound there, doesn't it, like any rapist or any child sex abuser won't be released. But that's not true. What Labour has actually said is that only the serious child sex offenders won't be allowed out early. I'm sorry, is there any form of child sexual abuse that isn't serious? Unfortunately, Andy Burnham can't face questions about this because he decided to swan off on holiday. But if I was interviewing him, I'd just ask him to specify exactly which child sex offences he thought were unserious. And it's all warped, isn't it? And if you just want more evidence of how mental the justice system is, take a look at this. Yes, a police officer who shot gangland triggerman Chris Carber dead after the vile armed criminal tried to drive his car into police officers will now not face a misconduct hearing. That's good. That's the good bit, OK? That's not the bit that's warped. The warped bit, really, is this.
Today's decision by the IPC that after 4 years, NX121 will not be facing any misconduct hearing is welcome, but this has taken far, far too long.
Oh, it's taken far too long. Oh, I've always been on the side of this particular police officer. Personally, I just think that Mark Rowley and the Met actually can get stuffed, because watch closely here. You might recognise the police officer in this video, and this was taken shortly after the shooting of Chris Carber.
Firstly, I would like to offer my heartfelt condolences to the family of Chris Carber. I can't begin to imagine what they're going through at this difficult time for them as they try to come to terms with the loss of their loved one. I know there is a great deal of concern out there about this incident. The community are hurt and there is trauma.
That man is Alexis Boone, the bloke now in charge of Hampshire Police and the force which delayed administering first aid to Henry Novak because they believed his ethnic minority murderer instead of him. And Alexis Boone could not issue anything like the same emotion over that as he did after Chris Carber was shot and killed. Yeah, he was at the Met at the time and he was apologising there to the family of Chris Carber, worried about the community. Oh, gosh, I know you've experienced trauma. Carber had actually shot a bloke in a busy nightclub not long before he himself was killed by a police officer who was just trying to protect himself and others. It actually also took a jury just a matter of hours to clear the police officer for murder. It's taken the IOPC 4 years now to clear his name entirely. And why did the CPS even charge him? I suspect simply because he shot a black man and they were worried about being called racist. The justice system in this country is absolutely rotten to the core, isn't it? Let's get the views of my panel on this now.
The breaking point. How Britain's prison crisis and policing feuds are shaking the nation to its core. Welcome back to Britain Underneath, the place where we peel back the layers of Westminster's spin, policy blunders, and the quiet decay of our most critical state institutions. If you are passionate about understanding the raw, unvarnished truth behind United Kingdom current affairs, please take a moment to subscribe right now. Your support directly enables this channel to keep investigating the systemic issues shaping our daily lives. So hit that subscribe button and stay informed with us. Now, let's plunge right into the heart of the matter. There is a distinct, unmistakable chill running through the corridors of power in Whitehall, and for once, it has very little to do with the unpredictable British weather. What we are witnessing across the United Kingdom today is not merely a routine policy debate or the usual political friction between opposing benches. It is a fundamental, dangerous fracture between the government of the day and the very authorities tasked with keeping our streets safe. When police forces begin to open fire verbally on the executive branch, when senior officers openly question the wisdom of the Prime Minister, and when victims' families watch in absolute disbelief as convicted criminals walk free early, you know that the social contract is not just frayed, it is rapidly unravelling. To understand the sheer magnitude of the current crisis, one must look at the unprecedented collision between the prison overcrowding emergency and the state of public policing. For decades, successive administrations have kicked the proverbial can down the road, ignoring the structural collapse of our penal infrastructure. Now the bill has finally come due, and the cost is being paid not by the politicians who engineered the shortfall, but by ordinary citizens and overworked frontline officers. The implementation of emergency early release schemes was presented to the public as a necessary, temporary safety valve to prevent our penitentiaries from overflowing entirely. Yet, as the operational reality unfolds, the consequences are proving to be nothing short of catastrophic. Consider the recent shockwaves sent through the justice system when public warnings emerged regarding the early release of individuals involved in some of the most heinous offences against law enforcement. When the Police Federation actively contemplates legal manoeuvres against government decisions, and when individual regional forces feel compelled to publicise their grave concerns over public safety, the traditional boundaries of civil restraint are crossed. It is extraordinarily rare for a police chief to stand before a camera and effectively warn the public that national policy is eroding confidence in basic law and order. Yet that is precisely the reality we face today.
A couple of different aspects to this. Firstly, the early release scheme. Andy Burnham appears to have lost the support of Thames Valley Police. I suspect wider police forces as well. And, you know, he's accused now of letting down victims of domestic abuse and child victims of sexual abuse.
It's absolutely incredible, this. I know that the defenders of the Labour government will say, and it's a fair criticism, that the Conservatives didn't build enough prison places. But you've had 2 years to think through what your early release scheme might look like. And in rough terms, I think it's about 50% of the prison population are in there for violence or sex crimes. Well, I would completely discount that lot and look at the other 50%. There also doesn't seem to be any clarity around what the terms of an early release might be. I mean, for example, if you released someone, preferably not a child sex offender, but somebody who'd been involved, I don't know, in a robbery, and you said, well, you've actually got to stay at home or within a mile of your house, or if you've traumatised some innocent people in a particular town, you can't go within 10 miles of that town. None of these conditions appear to have been thought through either. It's absolutely extraordinary because the overcrowding was a problem that this government inherited, but it's had 2 years to think through the solution, and Andy Burnham's making it up over his tea over a weekend. It's absolutely mad. So I'm unsurprised that the police force are worried about this because, in essence, their workload goes up because they know a lot of crims are coming out of prison and will be in the community much earlier than was anticipated.
You know, when it was first released, I think it was misreported, actually. The headlines were poorly written about there'll be no rapists released or child sex offenders. But actually, when you read it, they say no serious child sex offenders. So what, just a little bit of child sex offending's OK, but we draw the line at something else. I find that really perplexing. The government now deciding, and we can't question him because he's on holiday. This is the thing, we can't say to him, sorry, Andy, which child sex offences do you think are OK?
Well, unfortunately, we've got a Prime Minister that becomes Prime Minister and then avoids going to Parliament, despite having the opportunity to go to Parliament, chose not to, chose to muddle around with that. Then all these horrific things are happening and we are getting misleading headlines, of course, from the establishment Westminster media that don't like to tell the British people the truth. If they do that, there would be a problem in this country, because I think if people knew what's really going on in this country, we would see civil unrest. And then, of course, we then have the situation here where we've got a Prime Minister who I don't actually think he's that bothered about prisoners being released early. What he's bothered about is that the public might start turning on him a bit quicker than he thought. Already we've seen the Burnham bounce isn't a thing. Already we're seeing that he is incredibly unpopular with his choices of government appointments. So I think what Burnham will be doing is trying to hide. And, I mean, by the way, how on earth is that bloke on holiday right now? He's just become Prime Minister. I mean, most normal people, when they get a job, don't go on annual leave within a few weeks. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
Of workers' rights,
and I've got nothing against people having a rest. But the point about this story, I think, and I think particularly with this police officer here,
yes,
is we have a serious situation in this country where the police are bothered about offending absolutely everybody apart from white people. That's the truth of the matter. Heterosexual white people, even worse so. We've got a situation in this country where people are too scared to talk about radical Islam because they might be called Islamophobic, which is not a real world. They try to talk about the fact that actually we should do stop and search, but oh no, that's really offensive towards black people. The reality in this country is the police, and by the way, police officers tell me this. Police officers, then they'll get sacked if they say it at work, but they tell me, Essex police officers in particular, and police officers in a Met that live in Essex, that are also my residents, tell me they are so scared to speak the truth at work because the institutional bias is unbearable. But these people have got mortgages to pay. And so what we need to see, and I hope police officers do this, I hope we start to see them actually whistleblow what is really going on in our police forces, because the institutional bias against white people is horrendous.
Well, OK, we'll focus on the early release thing and we'll come on to the Chris Cabba police officer in a second. But this early release thing is going south pretty quickly for...
The human element of these policy decisions makes the current narrative even more unsettling. Across the country, thousands of individuals convicted of severe domestic offences are becoming eligible for shortened sentences. We are expected to believe that the probation service, an arm of the state already stretched to its absolute breaking point, possesses the capacity to monitor, track and manage this sudden influx of offenders. History, however, tells a far more sobering tale. When individuals, subject to early release measures, commit further offences within 48 hours of crossing the prison gates, it reveals a system operating on blind hope rather than structured supervision. As we navigate through these complex institutional failures, it becomes increasingly crucial that independent platforms exist to analyse what is happening beneath the surface. That is why Britain Underneath exists. As we navigate through these complex institutional failures, it becomes increasingly crucial that independent platforms exist to analyse what is happening beneath the surface. That is why Britain Underneath exists. If you appreciate this level of mature, unfiltered analysis, please consider subscribing to the channel right now. Every single subscription helps this channel survive, grow, and continue delivering the deep dives you rely on. Take a breath, stay informed, and make sure you do not miss a single update as this story continues to develop. The confusion deepens when one examines the government's communication surrounding violent and sensitive offences. Official messaging assured the public that serious offenders would remain behind bars, safe from early release provisions. Yet a closer examination of the legal nuances reveals a perplexing hierarchy of crime. The notion that certain categories of offences against vulnerable individuals could ever be framed as non-serious is not just an error in political messaging, it is an insult to common sense and a profound betrayal of victims. When government officials avoid direct scrutiny or step away from the public eye during the rollout of such controversial measures, it leaves the public feeling abandoned and bewildered. Simultaneously, the internal morale of the British police force is suffering from a second, equally devastating blow. The resolution of high-profile operational investigations, such as the case involving firearms officer NX121 and the fatal shooting of Chris Kaba, has exposed deep-seated flaws in how law enforcement is regulated and held accountable. While the clearance of misconduct charges brings a sense of relief to frontline officers who put their lives on the line every day, the fact that an investigation dragged on for 4 agonizing years represents a severe failure of oversight. The process itself has become a form of institutional punishment, hanging over dedicated public servants and paralyzing decisive action on the streets. When a firearms officer must calculate not only the immediate threat before them, but also the 4 years of legal, professional, and personal ruin that might follow a split-second decision, the entire framework of proactive policing falls apart. Senior police leadership attempting to navigate these sensitive operational matters have often found themselves accused of prioritizing public relations over the firm, decisive support their officers require. This perceived culture of hesitation and institutional anxiety has led to a profound crisis of confidence within the ranks. Frontline officers across various forces privately voice concerns that the system is more concerned with optics than with empowering them to tackle violent criminality head-on. This institutional paralysis is creating a dangerous vacuum. On one end of the spectrum, we have a prison system releasing offenders back into communities prematurely due to structural neglect. On the other end, we have a policing apparatus hindered by bureaucratic delay, legal uncertainty, and an overarching fear of public backlash. When these two dynamics intertwine, the result is a law enforcement ecosystem that satisfies no one, protects fewer people, and alienates the very public it is sworn to serve. It is entirely valid to acknowledge that the government inherited a deeply damaged infrastructure. Prisons do not become overcrowded overnight, and the failure to build adequate capacity represents a multi-generational political blunder. However, governance is defined by how one manages the crisis on one's doorstep. Releasing thousands of individuals without comprehensive, localized restriction zones, robust curfew enforcement, or clear community safeguards is not a strategy. It is a reactive gamble with public safety. If you are finding this breakdown insightful and want to ensure you stay ahead of the critical issues shaping our country, please hit the subscribe button right now. Supporting Britain Underneath takes only a second, but it makes a massive difference in keeping this independent platform active and thriving. I encourage you to stay tuned and watch through to the end as we pull all these threads together to understand what comes next for the United Kingdom. The broader implications of these developments extend far beyond the immediate headlines. They touch upon the core principle of justice in a democratic society. A justice system must fulfill 3 basic functions. It must deter crime, it must rehabilitate where possible, and, above all, it must protect the innocent from harm. When the state fails so visibly in these fundamental duties, public trust breaks down rapidly. People begin to question the purpose of their tax contributions, the efficacy of state institutions, and the competence of those elected to manage them.
Welcome back to the show. Today we're diving into the intersection of AI and creative expression.
As Britain navigates this volatile period of political and social transition, the need for transparent, rigorous accountability has never been greater. The state cannot simply manage its way out of structural failure through clever phrasing, strategic absences, or superficial reforms. It requires an honest, courageous confrontation with the reality of our public services, alongside a genuine commitment to prioritising the security and well-being of the public above political expediency. thank you for spending your valuable time with Britain Underneath today. The situations we discuss are complex and fast-moving, but keeping ourselves informed is the first step toward demanding better standards from those in power. Please subscribe to the channel today to help us continue this vital work, and be sure to return for our upcoming investigations into the hidden mechanics of British politics and society. Stay sharp, stay informed, and I will see you in the next video.